let's try to dig a bit into this birth trauma.
Mhm.
It was in the old days, when I was born, it was also a regular practice whenever the child was born, then to remove him from the mother and place him in some kind of a box. Um, so, uh, as I understand it, the mother or the parent or the nurturer should in some way behave like the subject of the infant, because they should provide the nurture, the warmth, the love, the compassion, and make it a safe and as good as possible experience to come to this world.
Yeah.
But if there's not this connection with the mother, and I think the mother must be the most important person, because you have been carried around in the womb for 9 months. Um, so then there there is some kind of experience of abandonment uh, in the very moment that you arrive to the world.
Mm.
And this could also happen if the mother don't have the capacity to be present. Perhaps she's overwhelmed by the birth experience. That could be many, many. Some is medicated, so they cannot be present. But it has an impact on the child's inner inner world, and in order to heal that, we could call it abandonment complex or abandonment experience. We have to have the subject going back and re-owning
Mm.
that experience. Is that a correct understanding of
Mhm.
how you see this?
Yes, and it is, and then there is a challenge, uh, how to make this time journey,
Yes.
and the neuroaffective theory it tells us that when your prefrontal cortex is online and being able to relate to the suffering, to the feelings, or to the pain, then you're able to make time journeys, time traveling inside your mind,
Mm.
because there's someone there who can lean back in time and visit the inner child who was there back and then, and
Exactly.
and build a relationship with this inner child.
Mm.
If you're overwhelmed and your prefrontal cortex is offline, you're unable to do this.
Mm.
But when you go back in time, you come to a point where there was no me before you had a self,
Yes.
and then it becomes blurry because
Mm.
there is no archives of memories. There's no images, there are no recordings of what happened, only
Mm.
maybe stories and distant sensations. But
Mm.
but the funny thing is that when people realize this, sometimes a person will come into therapy, and we will start to explore some recent events and the emotional impacts they are having, and then I would guide the person to feel how it sits in the body and in the emotions, and guide the person to lean back in time and do a time journey with this feeling, and they would come out and say, it was always like this.
Mm.
I don't have a memory where I didn't have this feeling of anxiety underneath my skin. I had it all as, and we start to explore all the time when it was 3, 2, 1. Yes, it was there
Mm.
all along.
Mm.
And then people are even able to visit um, time periods before there was a self,
Mm.
because they can tune into this time where I was in the womb or when I was 3 months old,
Yeah.
and they can actually like tune their awareness into this period in time, and open up the body to feeling what sensations comes up to me when I think about the first 3 months of my life, and
Mm.
they
The 3 months in the womb or outside the womb?
either or. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, we can do different periods of time and then scan and say what comes up when you tune into this period of times of in time, what arises in your system, and people can actually start visiting these sensations and start relating to them, and it would crystallize out as being a very very small child, like a newborn child,
Mm.
and when this vulnerability is being seen again and related to by the person, then it suddenly starts to crystallize in a way that I'm able to relate to it. So
Mm.
I can do the work myself in that way.
Mm.
And that is possible for I don't know how, because this is really a puzzle. How can you relate to something that is not owned? There's no owner, there's no self to own the experience.
Yeah.
How can I then re-own it? Yeah.
Yeah. One way of putting it, Stan Grof also, had done a lot of work, before birth, all his different phases. And that research shows that it is really possible to have experiences of your time in the womb, and I think the solution it's a spiritual solution that the higher self is has part of its awareness in the child, but
Mm,
the I consciousness is still just a seed. It has not been developed yet. But the higher self, as a me, as a spiritual being, I'm supervising what's going on in the womb, and I'm also the with the part of me that is incarnated in this little embryo and in this little being that is developing within the womb. So there is an experiencer, or there is some kind of a higher awareness that is present during birth and the early years as some kind of an overshadowing presence.
mm,
um, and this is the higher self that we then move towards through the stages of pre-personal development and egoic development and transpersonal development. Then in some way, we can say we have the involution. We project ourselves into the material world, and then we rise up again and reconnect with ourself as a transpersonal being.
mm,
So my it's not something that I can prove, but it's an understanding that I have that
mm,
even though the consciousness embedded within the infant has not been, you could say, fully activated, because this is only something we can do when we are adults, develop the I consciousness and know that I have a body, but I'm not my body. I have emotions, but I'm not my emotions. No child can do that. And
mm.
this is awakening up to oneself, as you put it, as a witness. So perhaps when we revisit these earlier stages, we draw on some kind of a memory that lies within the higher self. I'm not sure, but it's my best guess.
I love that you say you're not sure, and
Mm,
I'm on the same understanding as you, and
mm,
I also really honor the I'm not sure, and
mm,
I have the same in me. I spoke to a very experienced woman who was working with birth trauma for many years, and she told me she released so many birth traumas, and at one point she was thinking maybe it wasn't even this person's birth trauma that came up. Maybe it was an archetypal birth trauma, or like in the collective unconscious. There are
yes.
so many birth
Yeah.
traumas around there, and when there's no ego, then the actual before ego state consciousness can draw up on these collective birth traumas. So
Yeah.
she said, I was not even sure if it was people's own birth traumas or if I was working with the birth traumas of humanity.
Mm.
So
Wow, I think
who is
that's a
doing it?
very
Yeah,
important point.
yeah,
Yeah. And because sometimes I also have, we unravel or experience experiences that is not from this lifetime,
mm,
and it could be sexual abuse, it can be uh, committing murder, or I have had many experience coming up in my own personal work with war traumas. And I've never been in a war, but I
mm,
see myself as a little child, and there's war around me, and my parents are dead, and I feel the terror, I feel the loneliness and abandonment, and I cry and I release all this pain. And then the question afterwards emerged: what was that?
yeah,
Was that an earlier life, past life, or was this some kind of a healing of the collective unconscious?
yeah.
Um, and it's very difficult to really be quite sure what exactly the source is, but it came into my environment. I had the responsibility to let go of it and heal it. And so we could call it a service. For some, uh, yeah, from some point of view, um, yeah, I think that's probably a good way to see it, that not being too sure about what is going on, but just honor that it happened.
Yeah, some of it, yes. And sometimes also it is possible to. So I'm both and or,
Yes, yes,
and I
yes,
also I enjoy both views,
yeah.
because sometimes it's also possible, and I like to have this hope in the work also,
Mm,
and it's also my experience. It's sometimes possible for people, if they were taken away just after birth, and they
mm,
have a depressed, collapsed, lonely child inside them who's very, very young. Sometimes it's possible to re-engage with these parts that
mm,
were exiled before there was a self. And sometimes I think when the suffering is too big, and people are unable to relate to it, it's being pushed down to the collective unconsciousness. So sometimes we can also, when we tune into these layers of duality, and
mm,
then stuff like that can come up.
mm.
I think when people are having classic PTSD, they
Yeah.
they are having nightmares that are really almost like movies of what was going on.
Mm,
And then this was fragmented and trying to be exiled from personality, and during the sleep it is just like whoop, going on again.
yeah.
If people have complex PTSD, like there was really big suffering, and it was also entangled in insecure attachment, and it was repeated a lot, and the suffering was over many years, and there was no holding around the person, then it becomes blurry, and still the self-protective system is trying to exile it, and
Mm,
it's being pushed out further into the subconscious, and then it starts to connect with archetypical stuff,
mm,
and then it comes up in dreams and in the psyche as more symbolic images, and then it also connects with collective suffering of different kinds, and
mm,
and also mental illnesses of different kinds.
mm.
But then it's connecting deeper into the archetypical layers of collective suffering, really.
Yeah.